right? So this is the video that I mentioned, right? And I put the link over in your LMS, right? So what the video is about is also what we will be discussing about in this particular session, which is on composition, right? And what is composition is basically just putting the elements together, whether you have shapes, you have maybe patterns you want to put it as the background, but you can put the patterns in the main part of the layout as well, right? Typography and so. Maybe you have pictures and different kinds of connotative or denotative image or images within your layout. And it's important for you to know, for example, where to put this and that, or rather to have a particular style which is distinct to yourself, right? So that is the object of our session today, right? And I'm going to look at it in terms of when we say composition, we're really talking about the designer trying to attract the eye, meaning to say that you want one is you want the overall layout to not look too cluttered or too empty. That's one thing, right? But also you want to lead the eye in a way, meaning to say that where should people look first in terms of our overall composition. And something that looks totally empty or something that looks really cluttered, sometimes it is so because we have no idea where to put our eyes, right? So when we know our eyeballs should move in a certain direction, so our eyeballs are being directed or led, and so this is composition, right? So where to put your eyes, right? So attention, where do people look first within the design layout? Where they do look next, after that, and so on, right? And do we have control over what viewers do with their eyes, So do viewers trail their eyes in a particular manner, move their eyes in a particular manner? Of course they do, right? But then, let's say for example we put 10 things within a layout, right? Which part would the consumer then look first, the viewer, right? So let's say in this particular case, where do you look first? Of course, because it's text, naturally we go from top left. But as it so happens, regardless of whether it's text or not, I guess we were trained from a young age that if you want to read, and most of us read using the Romanic characters A, B, C, D, E, right? And how to read this is usually from the top left, and then you go right, and then you go right and down, and so on. So this is how you read novels, this is how you read your textbook, and so on, right? So we were trained like this. So maybe this becomes a habit in such a way that when we look at the layout, we instinctively look at the top left corner, right? So do we have control over viewers' eyes? So I would like to think that we do, meaning to say that you might have people look at the top left corner first, but if you go ahead and have an empty layout and you have one dot at the bottom right or smack in the middle, then chances are people will look there first, right? So how much control do we have? Apparently quite a bit. Of course, we have free will. We want to look here and there. But if you design your layout well, or even if you don't design your layout well, then people, viewers, consumers will look at it the way it is intended or not, right? So hidden language in every picture, and sometimes intentional, meaning say we can put different kinds of shapes and so on, right? And lead people to look in a certain manner, right? But there is a language, right? This language can be intentional, meaning to say that there are things which attracts more attention than others. So if we arrange it, right? If we find a way to actually arrange these perception of hierarchy of images or weight, right? Then we effectively are leading the eyes or attracting the eyes in a certain manner, right? So based on the perception and processing of visual information by viewers, right? So we, as humans, apparently through research, we know that certain things attract the eyes more than others. So as designers, we can then use this knowledge to attract the eyes. Right? Designers and illustrators can inform with accuracy if they understand the visual language of interface. So this is what we're all discussing about today, right? We're discussing about grabbing the eye. Okay, now the eyes actually capture visual info faster than the brain can process, right? In actuality, sometimes when the light turns red or turns green or whatever, in reality the eyes have perceived it already, right? It has already turned red or green, right? But the brain processes it slightly longer, right? Takes a little bit more time, which is to say that when the traffic light goes from red to green, for example, maybe a few nanoseconds have gone when it actually turned into green, which means that there is a safe, even if you notice at junctions what happens that the other cars from the other direction will stop first because their lights will go red, then there'll be 1 or 2 seconds, then only your light will go green, right? So even if we do not have this 1 or 2 seconds gap, intentional gap electronically, right, there is still the gap where the brain needs to process the information, right? So that is theoretically there is still a safe gap, because I've seen a few junctions, a few heavy busy junctions where they don't have that gap, electronic gap, right? So actually the eyes capture visual info faster than the brain can process, right? And the most compelling information will be processed first, meaning to say the eyes will be led there first, right? And then if it's very dramatic, if it's very compelling, dramatic and or attracting the attention the most, you get there and you try and figure that out first. This is how this is from human survival. Sometimes we perceive something as important for our survival, so we process that first. We figure that out first. Right? Visual information may distract when it's attractive enough, meaning to say that you might want to distract, you might want to grab the attention of the viewer or consumer, right? And this is proven by studies. And eye gaze can be led, right? Even if you show random shapes with random colors, and they're flickering like a strobe light, right? You will still some shapes and or combination of shapes and colors will still attract your attention more than others, right? So this speeds up visual processing, meaning to say that when you attract the eye and you have a hierarchy of things that you put inside your layout. Let's say, for example, the top left you put a black dot, top right you put a red star, which is larger than the black dot, right? Bottom right you put a triangle, blue triangle, and bottom left you put a green hexagon, for example, right? And you make it flicker. You don't just leave these 4 things be, but you make it flicker, meaning to say that it will be shown for 1 second and then 3 seconds gap where it is hidden, and then 1 second again, and so on. So which part would people be attracted to the most, for example, right? And it might be because of the color, it might be because of the shape itself, it might be because of the sizes of the shape, and so on, right? So this speeds up visual processing, meaning to say that when you know that eyes can be led, you will then know as well that if you want to say something and you want to say, let's say for example, you want to say 3 sentences, and you put the 3 sentences in a design and you put them apart so that the design becomes well balanced, right? Then you know how to manipulate in terms of the shapes, background, or even the form of the typography, right? So that people read the first sentence first, the way you intend, right? So this speeds up visual processing, this reduces cognitive load and increases comprehension. Because when you read the sentence out of order, it might not make sense, sentences out of order, right? It reduces cognitive load, meaning to say that people don't have to strain their eyes and try to figure out, what is the real message behind this design or this layout, right? So still on grabbing the eye, movement of eyes in a composition is apparently not random, right? People move their eyes because their eyes are being led, right? So they look for desired information, right? You say, it's a poster on the Health University and we are having a discount of 50%, right? So the discount part would eventually get the people's attention the most. So they might look there first. Then only they read the terms and conditions, right? So this happens with a lot of advertisements. You have, for example, one pack of a very desired thing, like let's say 1 pack of Kit Kat, 1 kilogram. I'm not really sure whether there's a 1 kilogram Kit Kat or not, right? 1 kilogram of Kit Kat, right? And then as much as 1 kilogram per pack, as low as 2 ringgit, for example, right? So that's a pretty good price for 1 kilogram of Kit Kat, 2 ringgit, I would like to think. But it might be that as low as 2 ringgit, but as much as 1 kilogram. It might be that maybe you have a 10-gram KitKat for 2 ringgit. In reality, the 1 kilogram one is, maybe 40 bucks or something like that, 40 ringgit, 80 ringgit or something like that, right? So, and then there'll be the terms and conditions, with purchase of 200 ringgit and more or something like that. And usually these parts are made smaller lah. But because our eyes are attracted to the bigger fonts and or the more attractive things being, when you can buy something really cheap that's really, really attractive. So our eyes are attracted to that. And so we might go to the venue of the seller and try and get that 2 ringgit 1 kilogram KitKat, for example, right? So usually vertically, horizontally, so we are humans, so we're used to these straight lines, and most in terms of our eye movements as well, it is disciplined or trained to do this first, vertical and horizontal. Apparently vertical has more weight as opposed to horizontal, right? And there's less diagonal eye movement. It is most common to start from top left corner. Again, it is due to our discipline that we read Romanic characters, right? You guide the viewer's eye along an intended path, and you guide the viewer's eye to the most important information. So this is our task as designers. Alright, so next we are going to talk about this weight, meaning to say that when you have a weight, in actuality you're attracted to something, right? So we have real world objects with mass, and when you're massive, you are attracted to something massive as well. For example, we are attracted to Earth, and we call this force gravitation, right? And we tend to have and the force of gravitation is really the force of attraction. When there are two massive objects, two objects with real mass, they will attract each other due to the mass, and we call this the universal law of gravitation, right? Two-dimensional objects, on the other hand, meaning things that we have on our layout, will have visual weight. Same thing. It means it attracts something else. When we have visual weight, that means we attract things visually, which means that we are attracting the eye gaze, right? And how do we determine this? Apparently, based off of research, we find that there are some, we call this primitive, meaning these are the most basic things that will attract our eyes: size, color, value, position, texture, shape, and orientation. And the ones on the left are heavier than the ones on the right, meaning to say that we are attracted more to bigger things in a layout rather than smaller ones, and so on and so forth, right? So first and foremost is size, right? So bigger things will attract more of our attention. So let's say you put a very small dot at the top left corner versus if you put just now we did the blue triangle, right? So you put a very big triangle at the bottom right corner. People are bound to be more attracted, or eye gaze are bound to be more attracted to look at the bottom right corner. Right, so this is what we call visual weight. Right. So next is color, warmer versus darker. Warmer colors tend to attract attention more than cooler colors, right? So red over blue, for example, or yellow over azure, or for example, and so on, right? Value, darker versus lighter. So this is a bit interesting because we tend to see cooler color being a bit darker than warmer colors. For example, dark blue, which is a very cool color, will be much darker in terms of the value as opposed to a yellow, light yellow, for example, right? But then we can also think about, there's color saturation and value, hue saturation and value, right? So with regards to hue, warmer colors triumph over cooler colors to attract attention. And darker, with regards to value, darker colors attract more attention than lighter ones, right? Next is position. Higher placed objects in the layout will attract more attention than lower placed objects, right? Textures versus non-textured. For example, if you have an object, if you have two equal triangles, one has some patterns on it, the other one does not have any pattern. The one with more pattern will attract more attention, right? Shape, regular versus irregular. Maybe we are very much used to regular things, and maybe we are romantics. We like to think that, people have put a lot of effort in these regular things rather than irregular things which look more natural. So regular shape attract more attention. And last but not least is vertical versus horizontal. Our eyes are more attracted towards vertical lines rather than horizontal, and diagonal elements apparently carry the most weight, right? So we are attracted to diagonal elements first before vertical and then horizontal.